Back again YouTube, and welcome back to another video in this building a PHP framework series. And before we get down into the nitty-gritty of the second part of the tutorials, I wanted to actually do a very short video because I've made a little bit of changes while I had a bit of time yesterday and today. Just a little bit of changes which I want to go through with you guys before I actually crack on to doing part 2 of the series, because we're sort of like getting deep in it now. So I wanted to actually show you what I've done, what changes I've made. It's not a lot of changes, it's just a little bit of spell checking and variable that's not been assigned properly. So I'm going to quickly go through it because I want this to be a very quick video. So I'm going to go through what I've changed compared to what you guys might have had in the last GitHub push. Let's go to this base directory. And you can see that I've added a whole bunch of exception classes, which is an exact mirror of PHP SPL exception classes. So we're sort of like making them our own, and we sort of like putting them in this base directory. So the idea is all of our components, all of our internal components is only going to be extending from these base exception. And that's one change that I've made. So I've listed out all these exceptions and they pretty much contain the same information. We've got a constructor which we can override with our own custom message. We can pass in a code that's going to reflect our error pages, right? So that's pretty much the exceptions that I've mentioned that I wanted to go over as well. So I've laid them out here, and we're going to be using these now from now on to extend any component that we're building. We're going to be extending from these exceptions. And what that means is, if I take you down into my directory, I've also done away with the exceptions for the components. So you can see that the directories are now empty. I've got a git keep file that I've left in the directory because when I push this to Git, I want the folder to stay intact. I don't want to get rid of the directory, because if we come across anything where we need to implement an exception that is so specific for the component, we can then put it right here. But all the base common exception, we're going to be extending it from the base directory from now on. So, and I've done this for all the components, data repositories. So I've taken the exceptions out and we're now extending from the base exceptions, right? Just to tidy up a little bit, to provide a little bit more consistency, and not just have exception classes for the sake of having exception classes, right? And I've pretty much done that throughout the components so far. So again, you've not really missed much. It's just a small tedious task that I didn't think it was worth doing an entire video for. So I'll do a quick 5-minute video just to show you what I've done, so you can, you're up to date with the changes that I've made, right? Also as well, into our router directory, I've also changed RouterManager to now RouterFactory, and we're implementing the same technique that we use to create our other factories. So if I go into that class, you can see before it was called RouterManager and we was extending that router class. We're no longer doing that. We're sort of like implementing the same factory pattern as we've been doing previously, and we declare a constructor which we're passing in 2 arguments, which we're going to define in our application class, right? Then we're creating that create method, which is taking in that router that we want to use, checking that it's an instance of the router interface, and if it's not, we're going to throw an exception. And this is one of those exceptions that's coming from that base directory, which is what we're now using for all of our components. And the idea behind this is that we can always change out our router class and put something different. We could implement a different router, and once we're implementing those same method, then it should not change the functionality of what we've already done. We're just implementing a different router, which again, designing by interface allows you to do stuff like that. And we've added a next method So you can tell the create method that we've got, it's now a chaining method, and we're chaining this build routes method onto it, which then builds our route. And again, if you look in the last video that we did with this RouterManager, I've not really changed the code itself. The only difference is I'm now referencing the class properties instead of variables that we had in the method. And that's the only, well, that's a big change in terms of the structure of the file, but the core functions remains the same. It still operates the same. And so if I take it to the application class, nothing much has changed in here apart from the set route handler method, which we have now modified to deal with that RouterFactory class. And you can see that we've defined two defaults. So we've got two arguments within this method now, right? And they're optional argument because we're providing defaults, right? So we're giving ourselves the opportunity to actually set different parameters in our index. If not, we can leave the method empty, and it will just use the default that we've set right here. So if I open up that index file, you can see that set route handler method is now empty. We're not defining no parameters because we're going to revert back to the default, right? If we need to like change it up a little bit, we can do that easily. Nothing much has changed apart from that method. And what else have we done? Also, the big changes was the exception. I've gone about and sort of like extending the components, is now extending the base exception, and I've gotten rid of those exception classes. I've deleted them completely. What else? The liquid ORM, I've made some changes in terms of correcting some spell errors, some spell checks. And what else have we done in here? They're pretty much the same as before, apart from again changing out the exceptions. And what else? I've done minor changes, nothing massive, just again spell check, variable not being assigned here and there. And so I've just cleaned it up a little bit, tidied it up. So we're sort of like trying to make it solid from this point, so we can, when we're moving on with the project, then we've already tackled a lot of these little small issues that might pop up later on, right? And what else have we made changes to? Again, the changes are small. I'm going to be pushing this to Git, so you're up to date with the latest stuff that I've got. And the next videos coming up is going to be the MVC part of our application, or part of our project. I mean, it wasn't part of the plan, but in order for us to build out this framework, we need something to work with. So we're going to be simulating an MVC application. Then we're going to be testing out our database, our repository, see what we can pull from database, etc., etc., and then carry on building from right there. So that's the short video, guys. That's the changes that I've made. Again, I'm going to push this to Git, so you've got the latest stuff to work from when we come to do the next video, which is going to be coming up pretty shortly. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to be trying to bring you a lot of value in terms of what we're doing here, which is stuff that you can then take and go and implement it in your own environment, work, or your own projects. So that's it, guys. Take care. Stay tuned for the next video coming up pretty shortly.